Hey guys, welcome to the Criste Cast. Thanks for hitting play. I think you'll find this journey well worth it. Like all good things, it only gets better from here. For the full experience, check out the Criste Cast on YouTube, where you can watch each episode. But if audio is your thing, I'm happy to bring it to you here. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. It's free and it helps the podcast grow. And if you're keen for more, the Criste Cast Insider Plus on Patreon or Buzzsprout gives you early access, behind-the-scenes content, and bonuses for just $5 a month. Interested in sponsoring or joining me as a guest? Email me at caleb@thecristecast.com or visit our link tree. All right, let's go. Welcome to the Criste Cast. Welcome back to the Criste Cast, episode number 2. What's up, guys? My name is Caleb Criste. Today I am honored to have Tony Shriller as a guest, and I'm super excited to talk about comedy, culture, and all kinds of different things with Tony. Comedy is something that I'm super interested in, not only stand-up comedy, but being an actor and all kinds of things that he does are interesting to me. I actually met him because we were doing something similar, right? He also works as a videographer and a media specialist, and I met him doing those things at a biohacking conference a few years ago. So you can actually see some footage where I saw him for the very first time, and the first thing Tony did was he walked up to me and said, "Hey, I think we should make a video about how many videographers there are at this place. It's ridiculous, right?" First thing he does is start cracking jokes and making some things just light and making the mood fun and enjoyable. So one thing I want to say about Tony is that he's an absolutely great guy. Ever since I first met him, I knew he was somebody who was not only interesting, but somebody who I wanted to get to know better and talk to, and actually trying to find more out about him, right? So that's what this podcast is, where I get to just spend a little bit of time with him and ask some questions that were on my mind. Not only that, but Tony is somebody who is full of wisdom and really insightful information, so I'm excited to get that from him. Let's jump into the podcast right now. Again, as I said, I met Tony and under great circumstances, and ever since I've been following him on Instagram. He's got so much fun comedy. So take a look at some of the comedy he's got right here in the next few clips, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Bye. Today on the cast, we're joined by Tony Shea, also known as Tony Shriller, a world-class comedian, actor, dynamic entrepreneur, digital media strategist, and founder of Shriller Creative, and so many other things we could say right there. Tony's background is a fascinating blend of technology, e-commerce, marketing, and the performing arts. As a TEDx speaker, award-winning musician, and seasoned content creator, he's worked alongside industry giants like Hugh Jackman and Beyonce, and performed at prestigious events such as the Academy Awards. Tony's approach to digital media is innovative and empowering, helping creators and businesses turn disruptive ideas into meaningful realities. He's also a passionate Latin dancer. Watch out, ladies. Tony is a storytelling expert able to foster emotional connections and social change. We are thrilled to dive into his journey and insights today. Tony, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, Caleb.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I just want to jump right into it. Your first comedy special was taped recently at the Golden Laughs Festival. I took a look at an article online. How did it feel to perform in front of a live audience while filming, knowing that this would be part of your comedy legacy?
I love this, man. Diving right into it. That's right. It's still hot, and man, it just happened a few weeks ago. It was actually live tape at the Ice House Comedy Club, which is such a legendary comedy club. Very privileged to have done it there. And in terms of the overall experience, it's just like any other show, right? It's just another show with live audiences, and you're just taping it, so you can really capture those beautiful moments that you get and releasing to the world. So I would say overall, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity working alongside with some really talented, seasoned comedians as well, and the team, from Golden TV was very professional to helping it all done. So felt great, man.
For sure. And tell me a little bit about that. The people that were at the event, the team. I noticed the comedians, people from all around, different backgrounds, right? Was that something that was kind of part of the show that was, were they trying to be very inclusive, or is that just naturally what comedians are? Is it just naturally that kind of a bunch? What was that all about?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to have won the Golden Laugh Festival, basically the grand prize from the Golden Laugh Festival, right? Where it was many comedians, and we all did the competition, right? And I have a whole thing about creative arts and competition, right? Just because I was lucky enough to have won it doesn't mean I was the quote unquote the best comedian, right? It's just the right time, right place, right people, right vibe, right? And I'm very grateful to have been able to win the grand prize, which I was actually originally going to produce my own special, but ended up having an entire team produce it for me, and really just focusing on being in front of camera as an artist. In terms of the the lineup, it was actually specifically AAPI, so focusing on AAPI comedians. That's really what Golden TV is about, right? Really highlighting the diversity within AAPI community, right? So even Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, there's just so many different styles, right? So many different lifestyles, so many different way of thinking, so many different occupations, and just overall. And we were very cool. It was very cool to see like so many amazing API comedians, sharing the same stage with me. So overall it was really good. And shout out to the team out there, really crushing it with the production as well.
For sure. And as you mentioned, obviously you have the ability to do production things yourself, which we're going to get into, but the fact that somebody else was able to do that for you, hey, that makes it a little bit easier, right? It makes a nice little opportunity. And when it comes to, as you mentioned, the kind of comedians that were out there, you yourself, in your actual set, you touched on the topic of being Taiwanese versus Chinese, which had your audience in stitches at different points. How do you approach cultural comedy, and what's your process of balancing humor and potentially sensitive subjects, such as
I love
culture
that.
Identity? Right.
That's a great question, and I want to kind of give a little point about the having the background of in production, and obviously I have my own agency when it comes to having a production capability. I would say it's a very good experience and exercise in general for anybody, right? Anybody who is, whether it's probably really common in the creative field, right? Like in front of the camera to behind the scene, right? Actor, director, actor, etc. I think it's a good exercise for number one. Really experiencing perspective, right? What does it really feel like to be in front? And then number two, practicing like humility in a way, right? Like sometimes there's so many moments where I'm like, oh, I would have done things differently, but guess what? I'm not on the other side right now, right? Let's focus on what is this right now. Just focusing on being the talent, crush it so they can, really letting people do, their 100%. I focus on getting 100%. So I'm very grateful for opportunities like that. And, whenever I get like acting, modeling or comedy gigs, I try to think of that, right? Once in a while you'll have those small sparkles, you just see people, you want to point something out, but it's like, dude, you know what? Let them have it, right? And I think this translates to entrepreneurship in general, right? How many entrepreneurs out there, often we are doing so many things, right? And it's very hard to delegate, right? It's very hard to let go of things, right? Yeah. So it's a very useful skill to have just in general, whatever occupation you're in, right? Now, going to your question about comedy cultural, it is very important to me in terms of like my Taiwanese American identity, right? It is absolutely vital, and it is a big part of my stand-up comedy identity in the sense that, I do think it is a sensitive topic, obviously politically, culturally, but that's what comedy is about, right? Comedy is about bringing up topics that people might not want to talk about. It is about not just making people feel great, but making people question things, right? And to me, the best comedy is really about 50% of the people laughing and 50% of people feel like very uncomfortable, right? And that's when you you are pushing the boundaries, right? That's when you're becoming a better
shock factor
comedian. That's right. So that's really the big part for me. And in terms of topics, yeah, absolutely. I think most of the topics come from my personal experiences and then observational sometimes. But I would say I write down anything that comes to my head. Often I'm just walking down the street and walking my dog or taking a shower, or like sometimes when I'm like out dancing, like I would just think of an idea. I have to just really capture that and then craft it around. So I do think we're at a stage where comedy is really coming back in the sense of stand-up specifically, in a sense that like people are starting to get a little bit tired of like canceling everything, right? So I'm very, very lucky in that sense as well.
Yeah, and as you said, the comedy world has always gone through ups and downs and different areas where some things can be off limits and other times nothing's off limits. And when it comes to comedy, do you believe there are limits, or should everything be open to discussion? Should this be a free speech, space when it comes to mediums?
Yeah, that's a deep question, man. I think anything is off limit. There shouldn't be any limit when it comes to when you are at the context of stand-up comedy, right? Because in order for a comedian, from the comedian perspective, to be good, right? To become a better comedian, you have to take risks, right? It's like entrepreneurship, same thing, right? Like, it's like if you're telling entrepreneurs that, like, dude, like, if you want to start a business, here are all the limits, right? Then they're never gonna start. They're never gonna make mistakes. They're never gonna learn from their failures or falling down, right? So I would say it is a very fundamental and healthy thing to have no limits when it comes to stand-up comedy, specifically when it comes to topic, right? And the bottom line is this, dude, like, freedom of speech, right, comes with freedom to offend people and to be offended, right? So we're blessed to have the opportunity to say whatever we want. If you don't like it, cool, man. You know, you don't have to be there, right? You can leave, right? But what you cannot do is tell people to limit the other person's voice. So,
right. No, and as you said there, I think that's a great way to kind of summarize that whole aspect of things. That in this context, right, in this framing of things, right, of comedy, I also believe that we need to be able to have this freedom of speech, because at the end of the day, when we stop communicating, that's usually when the fighting starts to happen, right? The wars get fought, not when we're in actually peace or negotiations. No, they're when we've decided and already made our decisions and then decided to act in unruly ways. So anyways, not to go into that whole tangent, but I think that comedy has a big thing when it comes to creating social change. And I know that you're a big component of social change in the world and being able to use media, not only media, but specifically comedy, as something that can be a tool right there. So tell me, what's kind of your maybe overarching goal for yourself when it comes to wanting to do things? Is it because you want to make big change to the world? Do you want to become something where you're just a great comedian? What's your big kind of focus when it comes to, I guess, this area of your life?
Yeah, that's a deep question, man. I gotta have to take my glasses off for that. So
it's a big
really
one.
Three things that I'm very passionate about, and it's my sort of life's mission, right? Well, number one, being a stand-up comedian is fundamentally being who I am, right? And it took me a long time, and I'm sure it takes a lot of people a long time to really embrace who you truly are, right? And I grew up as a musician, performer, evolving to a filmmaker, and the stand-up comedy thing was always in the back of my head. So truly being who I am and living my purpose, right, and passion is very, very important. So that's like the fundamental sort of structure around it, right? Now, the three things that I'm very passionate about, number one, obviously, like the Taiwanese American identity, right? I do think it is very important to have conversations, right? Plenty of people disagree with me, right? But hey, guess what? Like, we get to agree and disagree, right? And having that conversation, that's number one. Number two is this whole idea of like masculinity, right? Being Asian American, being an Asian American male, there is unfortunately, in the U.S., at least during my time growing up, there is a lot of misrepresentation of what Asian American male masculinity is, right? Asian American men typically are, not supposed to be masculine, and there's just so many things, right? That I, personally am affected, but also been lucky enough to have gone through the experience to learn how to go to the other side, right? How to really sort of evolve and just be who I am, right? Because I believe the most masculine thing you can be is to just truly living who you are, right? And I hope to bring this to the table to show people, right? Not just Asian Americans, by the way. And I believe in our society today, there is a huge problem with masculinity in general, right? Masculinity, femininity, because when it comes to masculinity, it obviously affects your personal choices, your personal lifestyle. It affects your relationship. It affects the entire society, right? So that's something I'm also very passionate about. How can I bring the topic up? And then number three is, I'm sure you're aware of this, being a musician as well. Classical and Latin guitar specifically is my thing, right? I grew up playing that and very passionate about really spreading the love of guitar. Right? And that's a big part of what I really want to be able to do, to show people that, hey, you know what? This is what guitar can be, right? Most people don't know what guitar is capable of. Most people have very limited understanding of what the guitar is, right? So specifically showcasing classical Latin guitar is something that I'm very passionate about. So yeah, those are the three sort of categories of things that really drive me, right? But ultimately, being a stand-up comedian, fundamentally being who I am, constantly challenging myself, right? And being able to tell stories, connect with people. I just love that, man. I've been blessed to have the skills and the talent, right? And it's a disservice for me to not do that.
Well said, right? Yeah, when
Thank
you
you.
have the skills and the talent, right, and you don't actually apply them, wasting an opportunity, right? Come on. Life's all about
Yeah.
experiences and opportunities and actually trying to progress yourself into a place of not just happiness, but into advancement, not just for yourself, but for others, right? It's a cooperation. So,
And that really ties into, kind of go back to the Asian American identity thing too, right? A lot of Asian Americans, it's not alone for Asian Americans, but a lot of people don't really pursue their passion, right? Because there's a lot of limiting beliefs around that. But I want to show, at the very least, hopefully, Asian Americans that, hey, you can go after what you really enjoy, what you love, and you can make something out of it, right? By being an example, playing the game rather than complaining about the game. That's the way I choose to really hopefully make an impact. So.
no, absolutely. And I really am happy that you're able to express it in such a confident way, because at the end of the day, really the people we can affect and truly get to understand us the most are the people that are the most similar to us, right? Not that we can't reach other audiences. Of course we can, right? But I think that you're very smart to identify with where your core is. And of course, as you said, not just Asian Americans, we've got so many other people that are looking at you, watching you, seeing how you're doing things confidently, and then learning from that process. And having said that, you did do the Publix TEDx talk a little while ago. That was in 2019, actually same year as my talk. I thought that was pretty awesome. You talked about getting out of your comfort zone, right? So this is something you've been practicing not just for the last 5 years, but previous to that, right? Before you could do that talk, you had to be practicing this to get noticed, to be able to get to that point. So how long do you think it's been? At what point did something happen in your head where you said, hey, I got to stop being this way and I got to start living the right way, the real way, the way that makes me feel authentic, right? As you kind of mentioned before in your previous answer.
Yeah, that's a great question when it comes to, let me just clarify and verify to make sure I understand it correctly. You're saying that what was a moment that made me sort of make the snap or like this decision to truly live?
Kind of that breakout moment, right? Where you started feeling, right, the connection between that true happiness, right, versus what you were doing before, right?
Yeah, so I would say to most people it's probably like a paper cut kind of thing, right? Where like most people, this is likely, unfortunately, the situation. People get a job, right, and then just stay there as long as they can, getting a paycheck, stability, et cetera, and then knowing in the back of their head this is something they need to be doing, but then they're like, maybe tomorrow. The next thing you know, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years after, right? I was actually very lucky that at a relatively young age, soon after college, maybe like 2 jobs after, I got 2 full-time jobs before. Relatively speaking, for my age during that time, I was actually getting paid a lot of money, full-time job. And, but like probably like 3-4 years in, I was like, dude, this is not for me. Right. And that was actually a interesting moment to truly realize, hey, you know what? Like money is very, very important, but money cannot provide you fulfillment, right? And I was like, you know what? I was making more money than I ever thought I could, right? But I wasn't fulfilled, right? And again, I'm going to repeat that again. I do think money is very important, but if there's a saying in Taiwanese that don't be so poor that all you have is money. Right? Don't be so poor
very wise.
that all you
very
have
wise.
is money, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people are like this. They have a lot of money, they accumulate a lot of wealth, and constantly, but that they don't really know who they are, what they want, what they're about, right? And the way you see it is like after you pass, like who are you? Like besides the money you leave behind, right? So it was kind of a gradual thing, but during in my 20s, I made the decision to sort of do my own thing, freelance entrepreneurship. But when it comes to connecting to the TEDx talk, it was, and I talk about it specifically in the TEDx. It was a few years right before the TEDx talk. It was a really rough time for me personally. It went through a lot of personal journeys, which you can see in the TEDx talk. And during my deepest and darkest moments, I realized and remember the power of micro challenges, right? What does that mean? It means like the tiniest change, the tiniest discomfort, right? Jumping out of that comfort zone could have a macro impact, right? And it's like the saying is that drips of water could one day break a stone, right? It's like just make that tiny little change, right? For me personally, it was a cold shower thing, right? And I know that's like a whole thing people have a problem with nowadays, apparently. But taking the cold shower was that one small change with a huge impact for me, right? I've been still doing it, by the way, since that day. Right, every single morning, cold shower. It's just a nice routine for me to start.
Self-discipline.
And then really, exactly, and it builds up, right? To so many things. So, when it comes to really embracing the challenging yourself outside of your comfort zone, right? That really snowballed to everything else, right? I mean, I went all in, dude. Like TEDx was like my first big public speaking. It wasn't like I never thought I would be like a public speaker, right? It was just I was like, dude, fuck it, why not, right?
Right. Hey,
and then I did it. I was like, hey, that was actually really, really fun. I really enjoy it. And that also tied into my stand-up as well, right? And most people would probably be like, whoa, like you went from TEDx talk to like stand-up. I actually like believe stand-up comedy is way more difficult, right? It's probably one of the most, if not the most challenging public speaking format. So yeah, man, I think when it comes to making a jump, a lot of people going through the paper cuts, but I can't remember whose quote this is, but Denzel Washington said it in one of the motivational videos, is that if you don't make the jump, you can never fly, right? So you gotta just make the jump.
Right. Insert some quote about failure so that you can actually succeed. Yeah, here we go. Right.
There it is.
The price of actually success is failure at the end of the day, right? You have to sit there and do that. And that's kind of one thing I said this year. I told a lot of people, they said, what are you going to do 2024? I said, I'm going to fail a bunch this year. Let's go. Right? Yeah. Translation, I'm going to do a bunch of cool stuff and I'm going to try really hard to do new things, right? That's kind of the thought process. But no, you said this in a nice way as far as being able to transition one thing, right? That one small stepping stone kind of transitioned into the snowball effect of all of a sudden you're doing TED Talks and you're doing stand-up comedy, which, as I agree to you, is the most difficult stepping stone of public speaking, something I've never done myself because it scares me. It's a scary place to go, right? When we jump over to that little area. And then when it comes to even acting, right? This is something you've had an opportunity to play with a little bit. Tell me, you're in LA, right? You're in California. How did you get into acting, and is that something you always wanted to do, or is that something you kind of just stumbled into after you jumped into the public speaking world? How was that all?
Yeah, that's it's an interesting one because acting wasn't something that I've always wanted to do. I've always just done it in a sense of like I did it in my own skits, because the fastest way to really achieve my vision when it comes to like comedy sketches, etc., is to be in the vision, right? So that's something I've always like enjoyed doing it. It wasn't something that I sort of aspired to become, an actor professionally of any sort. But I think this is kind of the interesting path that life takes you, right? Sometimes it's like as you evolve as a person, as a professional, as a creator, I am having more and more opportunities to really express who I am through acting, right? And I'm still, relatively speaking, very new when it comes to like acting professionally, right? For project that is outside of my own. But I very much enjoy it. And again, going back to that very first question about perspective, right? It's refreshing, because I'm constantly behind the camera, directing or producing projects, right? When it comes to like commercials, etc. So it gives you that refresher and reminder of just appreciating the work on the other side, So I very much enjoy it, and it's always seeking for interesting opportunities, collaborations with people. So.
Yeah, and I think to add to your point right there, you're being very humble, right? The fact that you have this experience on this director side of things and on the camera side, we could call it, right, of the media, right? The moment you start becoming the talent or the actor, everything that used to be kind of maybe difficult for beginning actors, I feel is a little bit easier for you, right? You actually have an idea of what needs to be done and where your mark should be and how the faces need to be looking, right? So there's a little bit of that benefit because of what you've done previously that's not only going to make you, right, maybe have an advantage, but possibly somebody extraordinary, right? No, I think, Tony, when it comes to everything you're doing, I mean this, your overall performance and the way that you kind of just naturally are, your authenticity definitely shines through, which is one of the reasons I want to talk to you, because I like talking to authentic people that not only shine with that, but are doing really cool things. And the fact that you've been able to come from this relatively short period of time, right, from not public speaking to all of a sudden being on screens, right, I think is pretty amazing. At what moment, right, did you sit there and decide for yourself that I guess you were going to actually jump on stage and go into comedy, right? Because again, this is kind of jumping even farther, because acting is one thing, right? It's kind of private behind scenes. But that moment you're going to go live in front of people and start performing in that way. What was that decision like, and where did that come from? Was that something that was always there? I'm interested.
Yeah. So when it comes to stand-up comedy, that was something I was always interested. That was one of the main avenues where I learned my English, right? I came to the U.S. when I was 15 years old, and I didn't speak English. And the best way for me to learn English was watching a lot of movies and watching a lot of stand-up comedy, right? And I've always grown up, I've always enjoyed making people laugh, not necessarily being like getting people's attention, so they can pay attention to me, right? But most of the time, releasing tension in some ways, right? Sometimes just it could be people fighting or whatever, and just me being able to resolve that, right? I enjoy that sort of experience. Now, when it comes to the really stepping on stage, I was actually going to start doing it around like 2019, 2000. Yeah, I was about to just continue doing stand up around 2019. This is a funny story. I was actually on a date, and I happened to be at a bar that had open mic. And this girl, I was telling her, because I told her about how I was passionate about stand up comedy. And then she was basically like, hey, if you go up on stage, well, I'll hook you up later tonight, So I went up on stage, and that was the last time I saw her. But, no, actually, I did okay.
Life changed from that moment forward.
That's right.
All right.
I did okay. But, and then obviously 2020, something happened. And there was no stand-up for a while. And I picked it back up as soon as the pandemic ended around 2022. Was it end of 2021 or 2022? Yeah, end of 2021, I believe. And I was like, I told myself, if I am remotely good at it, I will never stop, right? I just got to keep going and get better and better and better. I mean, I watched my first 5-minute set now. I'm just like, dang, how far have I come? I'm very proud of myself in that sense, right? I'm typically the type of person that's very hard on myself, and I'm sure you know this, personally experienced, like as an entrepreneur, right? It's so easy to just beat ourselves down, but learning to celebrate the progress, is a big thing for me, right? Learning to say like, dude, you know what? You did a mic today. Good job, bro. Like maybe you got 1% better, 0.1% better, right? Right? Maybe you're staying the same level when it comes to the same joke, but guess what? You got more reps in, right? You got more time in, right? So really recognizing that and celebrating success is huge. And man, and since that day I started doing it, haven't stopped since. I've been just evolving, and I had very clear vision of like I treat my stand-up comedy career like a business, right? I have like phases, it's like the Marvel's universe. I literally have phases, and I would see on my calendar, like, okay, like this is the next phase now, right? What is next, right? And obviously go with the flow as you need, right? As you evolve, right? So like now I've completed another big quest when it comes to having the stand-up special tapes. I'm super excited to share with everybody once it's out. Go check it out. And just, developing new stuff, man.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to the stand-up special itself, I know it's going to be on TV, right? It's going to be on Chime TV and Golden TV.
Golden TV, that's right.
Yeah, Golden
it's going to
TV,
be on Golden
right.
TV, yeah.
So, and also, as you kind of just right there said, you've got not just the pandemic that kind of shaped the ability to give your thoughts some time to just, brood, before the time came. But exactly, how do you believe that, like in today's world, like with social media and digital technology, right? How do you think that is helping push the boundaries for comedians specifically, right? In this genre for getting information and communication, right, out there? We've got this fast device. Is that something that you think is very important? And the reason I ask, because you use it a lot, right? This is a big tool of yours. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to social media, I do think it has, obviously, like any platform or any technology has like benefits and plus and minuses, right? So when it comes to just information, when it comes to access to information, definitely helpful, right? Like, I cannot remember how many times there are where like I am curious about something, I think of something that is like super random and it's a joke. I can just have easy access, pull up my phone, pull it up, search for it, and then I can write something, right? Like, I mean, back in the day, like, I don't know how people did it. You have to go to the library, search, do research to find out, right? Because for me, you still comedy, you still have to base on facts, right? So you have to have a basis of truth, right? So easy access, very great, and also gets a lot of inspirations, right? Inspiration when it comes to like content out there, right? Now the flip side to that is also number one is definitely a lot more saturated when it comes to just the overall like entertainment, right? That people have, right? So as audiences, you're constantly bombarded by that, right? So how do you truly stand out? Just where the authenticity really comes in, right? I don't see that as a bad thing necessarily. It's just something that really forces you to be aware of that, right? Because I mean, people were talking about back in the day, when you do like shows and stuff, even if, let's say, if a comedian steals somebody's joke, right? Like, you won't find out till like way later,
Right.
So nowadays, it requires, because content is out there all the time, just be yourself. Nobody can steal who you are, right? And I don't believe in like, the scarcity mindset of like, if somebody does it, like that takes away my opportunity to, right? It just opens up more opportunities, right? And then lastly, obviously it affects, mental health for sure. From my personal experiences, also like talking to people, right? Like when it comes to as creatives in general, because I don't think just creative people, but overall like people who are consuming, there's stats on it, right? Like just constant subconscious comparison, whatever you're seeing, right? Sometimes it might not be like, oh, they're so much better. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I should be doing that, right? Oh, I should be, right? So that definitely affects me. And for me, when it comes to the main platform that I'm really most active on is Instagram, right? I do this practice where I set a timer. Every time I see myself going on Instagram, I set a timer 3 minutes. It would just ring, right? Because how many of us fall into the pit of like the doom scrolling, right? And it was designed that way. It's designed for us to get addicted to it, right? So being aware of that, and then also every time I post, the only time I would go to that post itself is to respond. I do my best, by the way, to respond to every single comment. And so shout out to all the people who are commenting. I truly do my best, even with the ones that go viral. I'm very lucky. This past like 6 months, I've got like over close to like 100 million views now, probably. Just this past, I have like quite a few like viral videos, and then on top of that, everything else. But I do my best to respond to every single one of them.
Those are great numbers.
Sure. Thank you, man. And I don't let it get to me though when it comes to. There are times where I post, and then you see the viewership is like way lower, but like, dude, that's what it is. In the beginning, it definitely gets you. Like when I was posting, I would have like one viral video, and then the next day I post something, you barely get like 1,000 views, right? And then you'll get to your head, oh, what's wrong? There's nothing wrong, dude. Like if 1,000 people show up, like that's a lot of people, man. So I would say that's another sort of issue people have to deal with. And then I guess I can wrap it up with specifically for stand-up comedians, right? Stand-up comedians, not just comedians. That the format has definitely bring out people's opportunity and sort of people's awareness to be more creative when it comes to how they craft their performances too, right? And obviously, like, the reason why crowd work clips are so popular out there, number one, from the comedian standpoint, you're not giving away your material, right? And number two, from the audience standpoint, is that you're experiencing it live in a way, right? You feel like you're in the audience, you don't know what's gonna happen, right? So that's why it's so popular. But I've heard comedians out there saying like, oh, like it's like not cool. I'm forced to, I'm forced to make social media content. I'm forced to like post crowd work. I mean, dude, you don't have to do anything, man. Like, I mean, is it important? Yeah, but you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, right? You have to find your own way, right? Like, for me personally, I really enjoy creating skits. Some of the dumbest ideas I have, they're all like in the skits or memes, right? And I also post stand up, but. Yeah, I would say that's overall how it affects the ecosystem from the creator's perspective and the audience perspective.
Yeah.
What are your
Again,
thoughts, everybody? Leave
yeah,
a
man.
comment below.
Very,
I don't
very,
know.
very good. I like, yeah. Very, very
Make sure to give it
multifaceted
a thumbs up.
approach. Right.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Comment, subscribe, hit that bell. So when we
Yep,
talk
yep.
about these things, authenticity is obviously something that's shining through even in the sentiment of the answer that you have right here. And, just to relate back to the beginning of the conversation, comparison is the thief of joy, right? If we are constantly comparing ourselves to others and what are they doing and what are they doing, where's our joy at, right? So that transactional living is something I definitely try to teach with my own students and something I talk about a lot because, at the end of the day, we need to be able to actually just have a purpose, follow through, and then what happens, right? And that's just the way things are. So I think that when you are showing that to other people, that's something that, again, shines through with what you're doing. When it comes to actually stand-up itself, being able to do the skits, being able to show these different sides of you, I think it really not only expresses who you are as a person, but really also allows people to get to know you a little deeper, a little faster, right? So again, when it comes to confidence, right, where does confidence come from for you?
There are different types of confidence when we really talk about the term, right? There's the confidence of like how you talk to yourself. There's the confidence of how you walk outside, how you talk to people. And then there's the next level of confidence of being on stage, right? And then the next level is being on stage doing stand-up comedy, right? So overall for me, I think a big part of it is self-acceptance, right? And this is fun. I talk about this. Is it accept or accept?
We'll say. So
How
you
do
can
you
say however you
pronounce the
want,
word?
but my friend, no, acceptance. We'll say acceptance.
Acceptance, right? So
Got it.
self-acceptance. The moment you truly are able to embrace who you are unapologetically, that's when you are the most confident, right? So I have always been shameless in a sense of like, I don't have a problem complimenting people, right? Back when I was single, I don't have a problem approaching a lady if I find her interesting, right? I want to learn more about her, right? I don't have a problem going up on stage, And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm just like a brainless, like no emotions, Of course, I get nervous here and there, right? Which, by the way, nervous and nervous and excited is the same like physiological response, right? The only difference is neurologically, right? If you believe you're nervous, you're scared and nervous, right? If you believe that you're just excited, dude. You're pumped, So when I feel that, right? When I feel the butterfly, right? I just remind myself, like, dude, let's go. I'm just pumped, So it's not like I don't feel that, but the confidence thing, I think life experience definitely, right? Self acceptance, and also life experience, and I would say lastly is just knowing and remembering and accepting that it doesn't matter what you say, what you do, somebody's gonna say some shit, right? Somebody's gonna say some shit just by you being who you are, right? And for a long time when I was younger, like I couldn't accept that, right? Like I need to, like there's a people pleaser, right? But accepting that it doesn't matter, dude. Somebody's going to say some shit. People are too busy worrying about themselves. It becomes a lot easier. So I would say that is really the big part of like confidence comes from. And going back to like trying things out, right? It's only failure if you fail to learn from it, right? Trying things out, and if it doesn't work, try it again, And once you realize that you can already see it working, you are less worried about what is in front of you, if that makes sense, right? Because you already know that, dude. So what if I fall on stage, right? So what if my jokes don't work, right? So what if I blah blah blah, right? You got to reject it, whatever. I've already done through enough of this. Who cares, So that's a big part of where the confidence comes from, and unfortunately, tying back to the sort of identity thing, right? Like Asian Americans, a lot of Asian American men are just not very confident. Unfortunately, right? A lot of his cultural upbringing, a lot of his societal shaping it, right? And a lot of it is like representation, right? They don't see enough of people who are just out there. So that's also helped me to like sort of give the extra boost, right? Like this is my mission, It's my mission to show that, bro, let's go, and this is men in general, or boys, So.
And you kind of said it without saying it there. I mean, if you are experiencing this life yourself and you don't see the representation in your own life growing up, it's like, wait a second. Well, there's a lack there because I don't see it. And so if I could be that thing, then why not, right? And I believe that that's kind of the same thing that drives me as well. Even though I see representation in the form of race around me, the way that I feel internally, right, growing up, and the way that I saw the world kind of as a more of an introverted person, right? I didn't see people, right, always wanting to understand and be a people pleaser, right? No, everybody wanted to be the best and push everybody aside. So yeah, again, finding other people that are like-minded, such as yourself, is something that you realize eventually, it's easy. And then other things such as pushing yourself to do stand-up. Well, after you do it 5, 6, 7, 8 times, maybe it's not so dark and the lights have been turned on and now you see, right? Now it's easy. So I think that's a good way to see it. And when it comes to things being scary for me, right, it's always a question: do I want to turn the lights on or not? Right, because anything in the dark is scary, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to sit there and find a way to do that. So the best way that I can do that personally is by having communication and by speaking with people, such as yourself, and by asking questions and by trying to find answers to that. So. Kind of this rolls me in my next question here is, where do you get most of your information, right? Where do you get most of your knowledge from? Do you sit there and read a lot of books? Are you a podcast listener too? What kind of methods do you use to just embrace knowledge?
That's an interesting one. So when it comes to knowledge, that I do my best to have like active learning sessions every day, right? I'm a curious mind. So sometimes it's just the most random, right? It could be like I'm just walking down the street, I see something, and I think of like literally the most random thing, like something to do with nature or something to do with cars or something to do with people. The internet is great to like spontaneous, researches. I do my best to spend time to read. I was doing really, really well for a few years, but I kind of fell off the wagon there. So that's something I want to challenge myself to get back into that. And definitely listen to whether it's podcasts and or like watch videos or audiobook. Whenever I'm driving, I try to listen to audiobooks. But lastly, I would say talking to people. I enjoy, same thing, and I very much appreciate this opportunity. Hopefully, whoever's watching here, you find this helpful so far. That learning from people, man, like whatever it is that you do, right? Find somebody who is already successful at it or already on the path and learn from them, right? And sometimes people have this scarcity mindset of like, oh, like if somebody's already doing this, why would they want to share the secret or whatever, right? Which, by the way, is a part of my upbringing, right? Where like I had this limiting belief of like, hey, don't give too much, don't share too much, keep it to yourself, right? Because somebody might. It took me a while to shave that, right? To shake that off of my sort of subconscious, is that the more you give, the more you're going to get, right? So being able to learn from people, have informational interviews, like whenever I meet some random people that I find interesting, hey, just set up a coffee thing, hey, we'd love to pick your brain, and I think that's just a healthy thing to do. And not everybody is like that type. And by the way, shout out to you being, consider yourself as an introvert, right? Reaching out to do this kind of stuff. I think it's very, very important. Yeah, to constantly learn, because the more you learn, I almost turned Ty Lopez over there. The more you learn, the more you earn. But yeah, it's true though. Like the more you are, the more you're learning, the more you realize how much you don't know, right? It's like the people who think they know a lot are the people who don't, right?
Yeah.
So that's
well, the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where you start to sit there and you learn a little bit, right? And then you think you're the expert at it, right? Your confidence level is at its peak, right? But then you jump off Mount Stupid, you keep learning, and you follow yourself you fall into the valley of despair, right? And you realize, oh my God, there's way too much knowledge out there. And as you slowly start to lift yourself up, they call it the slope of enlightenment, right? And learn your trade, your confidence grows a little bit. And all of a sudden you're a master over here. And my gosh, you're finally at the confidence level you were when you first started to learn that thing, right? Yeah. But some people, they sit over here on Mount Stupid and they never jump off. They just sit over there all day long. And I feel like the world's kind of scary times, because I've jumped off Mount Stupid most of the time, and I'm sitting down here, in the valley and trying to raise myself up. So as we're speaking now, right, it's kind of helping me get over the slope with some other things, right? And again, as you said, with other people listening, that's the idea, is to just get people to, hey, don't be afraid to jump off, right? Don't be afraid to start this learning path, because this is where the fun actually really begins, right?
Absolutely. And like it applies to everything, dude. Like it applies to stand up, it applies to my entrepreneurship, right? Like just being able to realize that there's so much to learn, and like if you don't, like if you don't open yourself out there, it's very easy to get stuck. I mean, this is something that probably a very unique perspective from like a stand-up comedian sort of standpoint is that like I have seen many friends or comics in general when they first start stand-up comedy, right? Like there are these shows called the bringer shows, right, where you have to bring your friends, right, to which is great, right? But sometimes people bring like so many of their friends to like one show, and it actually becomes an issue, in my opinion. Like that, again, like you can see, I approach it very systematically. Like I always just brought like the most limited amount, whatever the requirement. Sometimes like, oh, you got to bring 2 people. Cool, I bring 2. I never bring like 10 people or 5, whatever. Because your friends are gonna be supportive of you, right? So your friends are there to be supportive of you. They're always going to support you in some ways, right? So you're not getting really the most authentic feedback, right? If you are bringing half the room into the show, right? So all of a sudden, like sometimes people have a false sense of progress, right? They think, ooh, I am, I'm there, right? And then they stop learning, you know what I mean? And man, that's such a dangerous thing, dude. Like when it comes to for stand-up comics, like, cause all of a sudden, if it gets into your head, dude, it's a vicious cycle, man. Like if all of a sudden, like every show you go, you have a lot of friends, they're always laughing. You're like, oh, dude, I'm very good, right? And all of a sudden, some show you don't have as many friends, right? And then people are not laughing at your jokes. Sometimes people start blaming the audience, and I'm like, dude, that's not how it works, man. Like I never blame the audience in a sense of like, number one, does it matter? Yeah, absolutely. Like the audiences are different, right? But it's our job as a stand-up comic to adapt, right, as we go. So yeah, man, really tie into that learning thing, dude. Like you just gotta be able to like, hey, what else can I learn? What can I learn today? What can I learn from these comics, right? These comics before and after me, right? So.
When it comes to learning, it's definitely something I'm always trying to do, not just when I'm watching other people, but even recently. Have you seen the new Meta glasses, right? You can use the AI to sit there and like actually check your environment and learn things about it.
Is that the Ray-Ban?
Yeah, the Ray-Ban Meta ones. Yeah, when you're talking about going outside and kind of looking things up, I started thinking, he needs to get those. He could walk around and just, hey, Meta, what is this? What is it? Again?
Hey, what up, Ray-Ban? Maybe if you want to sponsor us, another pair.
By the way, get them in here.
So,
when it just comes to the cool technology, it's something out there. But no,
I love those, by the way.
Right.
I was just going to say random fact is I love gadgets. I love like random small gadgets. I do my best to be very like conscious when it comes to like what to buy, what not to buy, for sure.
Okay.
But yeah,
speaking of cool
gadgets.
tech, what's your? I mean, obviously, there's always new tech coming out right now, and this could be a question is always going to have a different answer, right? Depending on when I ask it. What's the newest, coolest piece of tech you've seen recently that comes to mind?
Ooh.
Yeah. Big
the
question.
most recent. Have you seen how different my iPhone 15 and iPhone 16 is? I'm just kidding. It's a joke.
No, yeah.
I'm an Apple user. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's a lot of like really cool AI stuff. I've been kind of like trying to consciously not to keep following up with, I like, for example, I'm very into like productivity stuff, right? I'm very into. And anybody who is like in, maybe not necessarily in the creative field, but if you have like ADHD tendencies or actually diagnosed, like sometimes you get into this rabbit hole of like, oh man, I just get obsessed with like productivity, yeah, exactly. Yeah, man, for a while I was like finding all kinds of shit to, set up systems and all that stuff, but then instead of like doing the stuff, so it's like that meme of like the Olympics, like these guys with all these gears, and then the Turkish guy just like the glasses in one shot, right?
Right.
But yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, man. I mean, Apple just launched their new stuff, do some really cool camera stuff, but yeah, I think
that's enough of an identifier for me right there. The fact that we have such a futuristic world and all these cool things and nothing really pops out kind of tells me, right? There's nothing really new and special that we need right now, right in this moment, right? I agree. We've got the phones that are pretty powerful that do amazing things, and as far as being creators, we have a lot of opportunities to create with cameras, 360 stuff, and I've got the one of these like the AI like recorders, right? Won't say the name, but yeah, we have these the ability to do stuff like that you're kind of mentioning that are nice, but at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot that comes to mind.
It's been a while, man. It's been a while, honestly. Now I think about it, it's been a while since I was like mind blown by, I mean, I guess like the last one I saw was Vision Pro, which again, I would never buy Gen 1 of anything from Apple.
You got right in my next question. Did you try it?
Yeah. No, I did not, but I've heard like amazing things though.
Okay.
I've heard, have you tried it yourself?
Yeah, I went to the Apple store to give it a go, right? Made sure that I actually had the experience, because being an avid virtual reality user and for many years covering virtual reality and podcasts and talking about it, I knew people were going to ask me about it. And of course, almost every student I've had over the last 6 months has asked me about my experiences with it. And yeah, the technology is great. The only thing about it that I can say is there's nothing in it that was actually new. Right. I mean, other than the clarity of the screens, eye tracking, the ability to do what it was doing was all stuff that we were able to do on previous headsets with previous hardware at different price points. Right. Yeah. But they were able to take all those things and put them into one unit, which was amazing. But then again, at the price that it was, not really feasible for the average person, right?
Absolutely. And also slapping the Apple logo on everything is just, so much better, right? I mean, it's branding, right? So that's the power of brand.
Right. Do you like that ability, that idea that you could sit there and put screens around your room and walk around and see your media around you? Is that something that you think would actually be beneficial, though?
I think if it's something that like as it evolves, it's definitely something that like I will have to think 2 to 3 times, depending on price point, right? Like there's stuff that like, I just don't think just get it, right? But like for something like that, I will have to really experience it to see how I can utilize it to its maximum capacity, right? That would be probably the biggest thing. Like for entertainment purposes, you don't really need that, but like productivity, I would love it, And going back again, like I'm like obsessed with like productivity stuff, right? Like it would be so cool to be like who just drop, just interact like that. But I think. Recently, just like the past couple of days, I started doing a little detox and like wind down on my like complexity when it comes to technology, right? Like I tried to like simplify my workload, simplify my like organizational tools, simplify my tech, right? A little bit, just because like I was at a point where it's like, okay, like that's just too much stuff to do in too many places, already. So, man, sometimes you got to do a little cleansing.
Right, yeah, and good way to put that, right? You have to, digital detox is very important. Do you have a team of people that help you with content, or is that something that you're always putting on your own shoulders?
When it comes to my stand-up comedy, it's all me. So my stand-up comedy stuff, I shoot and edit everything myself until a point that I have the resource to be able to. But when it comes to my business and the content we work for clients, I have a team of people. Very lucky that I've been working with them for a while to help me execute.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to like actual digital media tools today, what do you think is the most important tool for creators such as yourself, people that are having to edit and do these kinds of things? What app, what tools I would say maybe do you think are the most indispensable?
Well, I was about to say like your brain, man. I was about to say like, bro, like I gotta be careful with AI, man. Like you gotta be careful because it's easy access, it's convenient, right? But sometimes just you yourself sitting somewhere with a notebook and a pen, right? I think that's very, very important to not lose our humanity in that when it comes to being a creator. Not to say not to use AI. Obviously, use AI, right? As a tool, right? Like we're talking about tools, but not being reliant on it so much that, I mean, can you picture a month without your phone? I don't know what it's like, like so we're at a point where we're like so reliant on it. But when it comes to content creator. No, I think almost all the built-in, you can use almost all the native apps have like really good, editing. I do a lot of editing in just Instagram itself. There's CapCut, there's DaVinci, there's Premiere, all these. It depends on what I'm doing, right? For client work, most of the time we use DaVinci, Resolve, sometimes CapCut, but yeah, there's plenty of tools out there that you can utilize. I would say those are probably the most fundamental and basic.
Gotcha. No, and I certainly use a few of those myself, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I even, as you said, that are built within the apps themselves, and that's actually the stuff that's I would say the most unknown to me. I know these programs like the back of my hand, but the apps and their features, they're starting to confuse me. And some of the videos I see everyday people making, I start to go, wow, all right, I gotta look into this stuff, right? One thing I wanted to ask you, just because we mentioned the apps, but what about like the trends, the styles? Because we can have the editing tools all day, right? But if you don't know how to edit a trendy or a video that's actually going to engage with an audience, it doesn't matter, right? And again, I'm not going to be somebody who is ever going to be a proponent of thinking that everything is about engagement. I think creating is for the purpose of creating, and not everything needs to get 1,000 views or 1 million views or 10 million. Some things are just meant to be, right? Because you want to create it. But if we are thinking about engagement, if we are trying to grow our audience and our community, right? How do you keep on top of trends? And the reason I ask this specifically is because I've noticed watching your material as a fan and as somebody who watches your stuff, you are very trendy. You're good at keeping on top of things. And even at some points, you're doing things that nobody else is doing, right? So you're not afraid to go above and beyond and try to create your own, new stuff, right? So where does that come from, and how do you feel like you're on top of that and not repeating what's already there, right?
Yeah, so when it comes to let's just speak it from like setting the context around, like if you treat it as a business, right, which every creator should treat yourself as a business, right? There are like creating for the creative sake, right? Creating for sort of your artistic needs, fulfillment, right? That's absolutely important, right? But as a business, right, as an artist who is a business, it is important to sometimes let go of that. And I hate using the word, but it is true. Let go of that ego, right? Sometimes so many artists just like, I am too fancy for, I'm like, dude, you can sit there and be all fancy all you want. If nobody sees your shit, nobody cares, man. Like, I don't care how good you think you are, how funny you think you are, whatever it is. If nobody sees it, nobody cares, man. I'm sorry. And coming from like being the artist sort of type, right? Like sometimes I notice myself having that, right? Like, my stuff is so good. How come nobody I'm like, what is? It's not their problem, Figure it out, right? As a business. So when it comes to trends, just overall content creation for my client, so obviously different types of people are different, right? If you're a comedian, obviously very different. If you are, we work with a lot of speakers, right? Motivational speakers, etc. Right? That's very different, right? Coaches, speakers. If you're a product, that's also very different, right? But overall, I would say absolutely. I mean, trends are important because it's already like a built-in thing, right? And it kind of removed this one layer of sort of complexity when it comes to content creation, right? And actually, I always randomly think about this, by the way. During my college years at USC, there's a really famous class by, I think it's Professor Casper, I think. He talks about just the overall cinema, right? And he talks about how we were entering this age called the postmodernism cinema, which means that you're taking whatever already existing and then you create around that, right? And that was the class was maybe 2010. It was barely, Instagram was barely coming out, And it was so funny. I always randomly think about it. Damn, this guy is on top of his shit, dude. He's like the history of cinema. He's studying and he's figuring it out. And he goes really deep into it. But when it comes to trends nowadays, right, that's what it is, right? The postmodernism, we're just following a trend, and then you're just doing it in your own spin, right? And I'm gonna repeat that. With your own spin, it's very important because I do my best even when I'm doing trends, right? Even if it's just sprinkled of my own twist to it, in writing, in style, in performance, right, in editing, whatever, that is super, super important. I mean, you have no idea how easy it is for me if I just want to copy the exact same thing, without changing a thing. That's very easy, and it's good for business, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that's where the artist type, right, where it's okay, I want to at least put in the effort, right? So I think it's very important when you're following trend as an artist. Nothing wrong with following trend. I think it's great. It's important, right? That's why it's called a freaking trend, right? Nobody will complain when you're wearing fashion, right? But put your own spin on it. When it comes to original stuff, I mean, for me, I get bored if I just do trends only, and I all my original stuff just come from random ideas I have or observational, or sometimes again, this might not be a trend, but inspired by other people. But then like you create based on inspiration, right? So that's probably the biggest thing when it comes to like just overall content creation. If you're talking about something that really helps with engagement, I think overall, specifically for like speakers or personalities, people are getting tired of like the hyper edited stuff now. For like the past 2 years, it was very popular, right? It's like the, like really like fancy edits, like graphics popping up everywhere, like cut to B-rolls and, like transitions, all that stuff. It was very popular for a while, but now people just want like just this, they just want like you sitting down, sometimes in a setting like this, sometimes you're just in a car, right? Again, tying back to authenticity, I think people really enjoyed that now. People are kind of tired of like just all the flares, they just want to see like, dude, like who are you, right? No filters, nothing, just you, So that's overall chaos. Trend. It's going, that's overall trending that is going, and I think that's why I like stand up comedy clips. People love the crowd work again. It just because to people who don't know, it just seems very authentic, right? It seems very like in the moment, just raw, So that's the overall trend I would say I've noticed.
Right. Right. And again, I do want to compliment you on that. When it comes to the crowd work, I've seen a little bit. I haven't had the opportunity to see you in person. When I was in California, it was before the stand-up, Tony existed. So, no, I'm excited to hopefully see you in the future. But yeah, as I was saying, your crowd work right now seems to be pretty comfortable, pretty confident. And luckily, the places that you're at seem to be pretty friendly for the most part, so you don't have to worry too much. When it comes to just like stories of things that you've tried, could you give me one example of something that you tried maybe recently that failed, that totally didn't work, something that you tried to put out there that you were like, man, that didn't go to my expectations, right? And then what was kind of the thought process after that?
When it comes to stand-up or?
Basically stand-up or social media, kind of the process of putting content out there for yourself, right? Self-branding yourself, right?
Yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of stuff that we try for like different clients that we experiment, right, and then like you kind of learn from. There's a lot of learning to do, and then for myself, I can speak more personally. Like, I mean, there were a couple of skits that I did. It was like more darker humor, and maybe because it was darker humor, I was like overthinking a little bit. Right. And then I put quite a bit of like mental time into it. And then it turned out like it just didn't perform very well at all. And I was like, like, was it because I overthink it too much, or what was it? Right. But at the end of the day, it's like, dude, move on, So that's probably my learning lesson. It's like something like when it comes to dark humor, stop overthinking it. Right, just do it. Because I was like, oh man, is this too dark? Am I gonna get canceled? No. Right. Just doing it. So yeah, I would say that my learning lesson from that is, it's all part of the process, man. Like just put it out there. You'll learn from it. Right.
And obviously you have the self-reflection, as you talked about before, to be able to do that. And kind of just jumping, away from the conversation where we had right now, you talked about earlier having kind of this growing up with a scarcity mindset and then slowly being able to evolve that into the mindset that you have right now. And I want to touch on that a little bit just because I feel like I also went down that path of not only growing up with a scarcity mindset, but how that affected me mentally and making me feel kind of depressed and scared of the world and thinking there wasn't always an opportunity for me, right? Until the place I feel right now, whereas there's so much, there's an abundance, right? And we as people, when we work together, we have synergy. We can create more, right, than we possibly could ever use by ourselves, right? So when we work together, this factor of understanding that that's actually true, right? Where did that come from for you? How did you learn that, right? Because that's something that some people never learn, I feel.
Yeah, like being able to jump into the abundance mindset, changing away from the scarcity mindset. I think it was a evolving process where there were so many small moments where, and I still experience it here and there, but there were so many moments of my life where I started seeing other people's successes, and I started to feel bad about myself. And at one point I was like, bro, why? Like I mean, dude, I remember, man, like when I was in my 20s or whatever, like I was like, if I don't like, if by the age of 30 I haven't like made it, you know, if I haven't made it, if I'm not in like the 30 on the 30 list, you know, if I haven't made like at least $10 million, you know, whatever, right, then what's the point, you know? Just then I shouldn't try anymore, you know. Man, such a cocky and arrogant little shit thinking, you know. And you know, at one point I was like, bro, that's like really tiring. You know what I mean? It's you can always be better. You can always become better. And constantly comparing yourself with others and thinking that like somebody's taking away opportunities from you, it just doesn't help, right? And this happens in like stand up, in entrepreneurship, right? So I would say it was a gradual perspective shift from like also learning, right? Reading books, right? And realizing that like it's just such an abundance world that there's really no need to have the scarcity mindset, because it doesn't help you. It only limits you, right? And you know, from my upbringing, there's just so many small things that, you know, your parents say that like just stuck in your head, right? And being able to, number one, I guess the first step is be aware of it, right? Be aware of some of these subconscious beliefs that just there, you know, is very important. And sometimes the awareness come from somebody that you were close with, friends, intimate relationships. Sometimes come from professional experiences, right? But being aware of it and accepting that exists, that's a step two, right? Like, okay, you know what? I do have this thing, you know? And number three is like, do something about it, right? If you're not going to do something about it, you're just aware of the fact that you have this mindset, but you're refusing to change, then you're just going to get stuck there, man. Because any progress comes with, you know, it's just like working out, right? Like in order for you to build muscle, you have to tear some muscle up, you know? So I would say like those are really important steps to have. It doesn't matter what field you're in, man, like breaking out of that scarcity mindset. But for me specifically, I can speak as a creative entrepreneur, is that letting go of this idea that somebody is taking away opportunities from you, you know, because you constantly have to go through it, right? As an actor, you know, like, right. As an actor, director, whatever it is, you know, like stand-up comedian, right? Like people are not taking away opportunities from you, man. People are just going on their own damn paths and actually open up more opportunities, you know? So I'll give you one example that was very clear. Like I remember distinctly that when Parasite, the movie Parasite, the Korean movie, won the Oscar, being the very first like foreign country to win the Oscar Best Picture, right?
Right.
I remember there was just one split moment. I was like, man, I wanted to be that, you know? I wanted to be like the first, like Taiwan. I want to be like Taiwan, like, you know, Best Picture, right? Oscar, right? Like literally, it was maybe like quick, like 2 seconds, you know? I was like, jealous, you know? You took it away from me. But then I immediately, I was aware of it and I switched. I was like, dude, that is awesome. You know what I mean? Like finally there's like, you know, in Asian country, it could be foreign country. I'm pretty sure it's foreign country, but finally people see like, wow, like Asian countries can make foreign films that can win the Best Picture, right? And I was like, dude, that's just opening up, you know? That is just like opening up, you know? And yeah, man. So I would say that really applies to that'll help you for your own mental state and help you become better, right? And everybody's different. Some people give up very easily, right? They're like, well, what's the point, you know? So that's my perspective from like transitioning from like scarcity to abundance.
Yeah, and I like how you kind of showed the path there, as you said, with your parents and the things that you get told as an early, you know, adult or an early kid, right? Those things usually stick with you, right? The values of our parents, and again, we have to remember they're a product of their time, right? And not just the product of their time, the product of location, right? And proximity to the things that were available to them. So, you know, when it comes to our parents, we have to say, okay, those are their statements, and now, right, where's our opportunities and where can we possibly go? So, you know, one thing I really liked, as you also kind of mentioned too, is that you read books And not only by reading books, especially at the time, we didn't have the podcast world, we didn't have YouTube, but by reading books, you were able to kind of push your mindset and able to see things in different perspectives, which then, of course, shapes. And again, the reason I talk this way is because I care about this path. I find a lot of people get stuck in this path and don't really know where to go, or they get lost in it. And I want to, like the people that are listening, wherever they are on that journey, I want to make sure that people have the tools that are available so that they can also do really cool things. Because just as you and I are talking about, and you and I have done some cool things in our lives, right? The potential for everybody out there is also, there for them to do those really cool things. And I kind of want them to piggyback off of you, and I want them to piggyback off of me, and then, a future guest of the show. And that's kind of the purpose of again, why I want to communicate in this way. So I really appreciate the way that you expressed it in that way. I think it's a nice way for people to understand that, right? Again, I also noticed you said something there that was also pretty important, which is that, and very honest. I appreciate you being very honest, right? We get jealous in crazy situations sometimes when people are finding success, right? And then all of a sudden Parasite finds success and, no, not them, right? But this feeling of being able to catch yourself right away and then being able to transfer that immediate thought into something else, right? That's what actually shows the wisdom, right? We're all people that feel the jealousy, but the people that actually are able to then transition that into the reality are people who can give themselves logic statements, right? And so where did you get that base from? And when I ask this, do you feel like you had a parent in your life that kind of gave you this ability to think this way? Or is this something you kind of developed on your own through time, through teachers, and just through your own education? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so going back to it real quick about the honesty, I think vulnerability has a lot of power to it, obviously. So I do my best to be like as authentic and vulnerable as possible, because I do think that connects with people and overall outcome is better, right? Now, when it comes to that trait, I'm not sure if my parents have, how would you describe it in one word? If there is a word to describe the specific trait?
If there's a word to describe a specific trait, a characteristic, right?
One characteristic.
Yeah.
So having the characteristic of being that, I'm not sure if it's from my parents. I think maybe the fact that I've been, and by the way, are you affected by the noise? Do you hear the outside noise at all? No,
you're
okay,
good.
cool.
Man. We're all good. We're all good. It's California, everybody. It's California. This is real life. All right, enjoy it.
So I think just being alone by myself for so long, like, I mean, I moved away from my parents since I was like 15 years old, So being alone and being forced to be more independent, I guess, that has shaped me who I am. And I guess introspective, is that the right word to describe the characteristic? Like being like observant, introspective, and being able to observe. I think that's a product of spending a lot of me time, and sometimes, and you, I believe you're in relationship. Do you live with your partner or no?
Yeah. I live with my girlfriend right now, and
okay,
I've got my son and brand new daughter with her right now. So
yeah, congrats on that. And I mean, I live with my girlfriend now, so sometimes we talk about this, right? Like we just like, hey, me time. We need space. We need to just have like introspective. Something you just need to think and do your thing, right? So I think that is also very important. That affects your relationship too. But I would say my characteristic of that probably shaped from like just being alone, being independent. I think that's the right word. At a young age.
Yeah, powerful, right? Important to say. I think there's a lot of people out there that kind of go right out of school and they feel like they need something and they become dependent, right? And get in relationships or get stuck in things, and they never really develop again that characteristic that we spoke about, because it has to come from somewhere, right? It doesn't just appear. And this is something that luckily, that's why we say we're raised by a community, right? Luckily, it comes when you have enough people that you communicate with. But when you're stuck by yourself, it's really hard to develop that skill, just in a genuine way. And so I know we have to wrap up here in just a moment. So I just want to end it with our few last important questions. One of the most important things, actually, one of the most important things I wanted to talk about this entire cast, it's been on my mind since the beginning, and we just spoke about family, so it's topical right now, and that is, you're a dog dad. You're a dog dad, my friend. So tell me, what brand or what breed? What breed dog we got over here, and what's the name?
She is a McNab, which is like a Californian Border Collie. and she what was the other question? She's what breed?
I say name. What's
Oh,
her name?
Oria, yeah. So Princess Oria, that's her name. Oria, like Oreo, but for a lady. She, yeah, man. I mean, she in many ways, changed my life. I mean, it's just unconditional love, man, like that they have, and I don't care what people say about being cheesy
Right.
and all that, but like dogs, I mean, pets in general, but dogs, is something that makes you as a human to see so many things that you normally don't see, right? And yeah, man, I'm a proud dog dad. She's chilling down there right now.
Gotcha. And the reason I ask is because, as you kind of just alluded to, I think that all these things are really important to life, and the little things about how people live and the things that are involved in our lives really make up who we are, right? And as you kind of mentioned, a lot of these things on how you're confident and how you're able to do what you do. At the end of the day, I think all of it's, you got a dog, my friend. She gives you all the confidence. No, right? No, it really is that. Basically, I've also got a dog, right, Casper, and when nobody else is there for you, the dog's there for you, right? When you need some confidence, the dog's excited to see you, even when you feel like you fail, right?
Yeah.
And if you're being upset or you're being rude, the dog treats you or teaches you how to be, right, which is just kind, right? So no,
Yeah.
the reason I mentioned that again is because you made sure to put it on your profiles, and people that put that on the profiles, they've got a connection with reality.
Yeah, dude.
Right?
I mean, it's something. I'll tell you. I mean, going a little deep here, but I mean, I actually, I was originally going to talk about it on my TEDx talk, but here's an insider for you guys.
Yeah.
So, during the darkest time of my personal life and sort of challenge, she was a really big reason. Also, what sort of dug me out of the darker phase, right? Because it was just this, again, the unconditional love that she has, dogs in general have, but like just that connection that we have, right? Like, it was like just that one morning, and that was the same morning that I decided to do the cold shower, the ass cold shower. And it was like 3 or 4 a.m. I was looking at her, she was looking at me, and it was just a moment of like, she just reminded me that like, dude, like I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad like you're good enough, like like thank you for being here, like you were like I am her purpose. Like who the fuck am I to think that like I got what I mean, like I ain't got nothing going on, like sometimes when you're in a dark place like that, and just your dog reminding you that like you just being you existing is their purpose. Man, that's a powerful thing, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Right.
that, and I'm like holding it up right now, but like man, that was a really, really powerful moment for me to remind myself that it's like I mean they just provide this spirit that humans sometimes don't have, right? Like I like to say this, like the three-legged dog spirit. Have you heard of that? Yeah. It's like when you see a dog with 3 legs and you throw a ball, they will run, man. They will go for it, right? They don't sit there and be like, oh, I got 3 legs. Oh man, I'm so sad. Only humans go like, I'm injured. I'm tired today. I don't feel like going to the gym. Oh, my muscle is so sore from yesterday. Only we're like, but like, man, be a 3-legged dog, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like just have that spirit. And I think that's something I love about dogs, and nothing against cat people, but I think cats are cute. I don't mind having a cat, but I think there's something about dogs that I just love. So proud dog dad. Yeah, that's right.
Again, I think it's important to say, and just for anybody who is listening, if anybody doesn't have a dog or a cat at home to cuddle up with, we'll be the voice of it right now. Yeah, you absolutely can do it, right? You got this, right? No big deal. Get yourself a dog.
You got it. Yeah, you're missing out if you don't have one. Let me see if I can get her.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, we have to show the dog photo. I was already going to ask you this. We have to show the dog photo when we talk about Oria. Oria, what's up, Oria? Oh, see, the Oria name makes sense now. What's up, Oria? All right. Hey. Thank you for making comedian Tony Shriller. All right. Yeah. Right. It's the people that support us that really make us who we are at the end of the day, right? And it really help us. So, this dog, definitely a good one.
She's a drama queen.
Well, the last little question I have for you, or the last little tidbit I want to put here is actually more of a question for you in the specific way of, do you have a recipe when it comes to success, right? And when I say success, this is a very broad term because success is different for everybody, right? When I say recipe, I'm talking about ingredients, and they can be very basic, they can be very broad, or they can be very specific, right? But if you could, on the spot, what would be kind of a quick, simple recipe to success, if you could give one?
Yeah, I would say number one is knowing what it is, knowing what you want, you know? Number one is having that vision, right? That's number one. In order for you to be successful, whatever it is that you want to achieve, right? You need to know what it is that you want to achieve. And then number two is having the grit. I have a thing over there. It says grit, leader, and grind, right? Having the grit to know that, like, you are willing to do whatever it takes to get there, right? There's going to be ups and downs, lots of ups and downs, mostly downs, you know? Being able to say, like, yeah, who cares? Keep going, right? Having the grit of that, and consistency, having a vision, having the consistency, the grit to go through, and then, yeah, man, you just gotta put up be the leader for yourself, be the leader for the people around you, right? And lead yourself to go through the process of being consistent and putting in the effort, and support the people along the way, right? Bring the people around you up together, right? Like give, right, rather than take, right? The more you give, the more you take, right? The more you give, the more you get, I guess. And being able to focus on providing whatever that's already in you, I would say that's a really key ingredient, kind of starting all full circle back, right? Like being fulfilling, living your purpose, living your fulfillment, and sharing your purpose with the people out there. I would say that's a very big key to being successful at anything, right? And we're all taking one step at a time, you know, achieving one thing at a time, celebrating along the way. That's probably the last reminder. Celebrate, remind along the way. I have to constantly remind myself, dude, good job. Pat on my own shoulder, you know.
Enjoy the process, right?
Yeah. So that's how I would say it, man.
Absolutely, and yeah, beautifully said at that. And you know, Tony, the last question I want to ask you real quick. I see that it's Tony Shea and Tony Shriller. What would you like to go by them? What's the way that you're going to go moving forward? What do you want people to address you as? Yeah,
you can go by Tony Shriller, just because Tony Shea, number one, is hard to pronounce. Harder to spell, to remember. And this is just my like public like stage name.
Hseih, right?
Hsieh.
You're right.
Yeah,
it is too hard. No, we're going Tony Shriller.
Yeah. See, most people still, yeah. But and especially we talk a lot about like comedy and stuff like that. So yeah, we can just go by Tony Shriller.
Absolutely. And so for the people listening, how can they find you?
You can just find me on the gram, IG Tony Shriller. I also started a brand new YouTube channel, actually, that's going to be like all things comedy, entrepreneurship, anything in between. So stay tuned for that brand new YouTube channel that I'm going to start doing. I started doing like a couple of videos, but it's going to be like, you know, comedy and entrepreneurship and anything in between. So Tony Shriller in general. And thank you so much for having me, Caleb.
Absolutely. It was an honor to have you here. And ladies and gentlemen, Tony Shriller.
Should make a video about how many videographers there are here in the area.
That's right. Okay, guys, and that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I really appreciate it. I certainly had a good time talking to Tony, and as you can see in the podcast, he is just full of insightful things to say and just lots of really good information, really good vibes, good energy being around him, and I just can't wait to have more talks with him in the future and to see how his journey unfolds. And no doubt about it, when you see him on stage, when you see him performing, you can see not only the genuine appreciation that he has for the people that are around him, but just the ease and the fun and the authenticity that comes from him, which is not only important, but just seems like natural from somebody like him. So it's inspiring to see that, and maybe someday I'll be able to put myself in similar situations and do things after getting such coaching from such wonderful people. So anyways, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video, hopefully every Wednesday. We're going to try to keep up with that as much as possible, so I'll see you in the next cast. Until then, bye.